So I have the template for the railroad here. I'm going to select all the layers, copy them, and bring them over into my template. I have a template like this for all of the shapes. It has the panel spacing as well as overlap that I use to just overlap each section. And you'll see when I split it up, I use that overlap. So what I'm going to do now is manipulate these individual files or pictures and get them to fit the pattern correctly. All right, so I grabbed that layer and I cropped it down to fit on just 2 panels, and I'll resize the second one to do the same. So this is what you were talking about, where we're designing these specifically to not be disrupted by the panel cuts. Looks like there was another layer in the background there, so I deleted it. I have the old railroad for reference as well open at the top there, which was on the ellipse shape, which I think the map was below the pictures, so I'm probably going to adjust that. I'm going to sneak that up a little to get it to the edge. And pictures like this, if it's just a little bit, I'll stretch it if I need to instead of proportionally sizing it up. I think this one I ended up proportionally sizing it up. Just bringing down a guide to help me crop that out. Yeah, so I go back into the original one and try to see what we did. So I'm going to reposition these now. One thing you'll see on this is when I'm templating, I move them, I don't center them, I move them lower. So when you're perceiving them from underneath, you'll see more images and the image will be less on top of the form. I actually go back and grab another copy that I didn't cut down. So I decide I want to move the face out of the cut line. So I shift the composition over, get rid of that, turn the new one back on, shift the composition over so the face is complete, and just chop off the extra when I select the right layer. There we go. So here's my process for starting to warp these. I grabbed all the images and I grouped them together, and then I'll save that as just a backup and turn that layer off. The new group, the group copy here, I'll merge into, I guess, one layer, and then I'll use that to start warping. So that first copy is my base. I'll make another copy, and this will be my first panel. So you'll see I'll grab to the second guideline, which is the little bit of overlap. I'll invert my selection and delete everything else. And then you'll see the where the warp tool is there. Later on I have a shortcut for it, so I'll just be using a keyboard shortcut for the warp tool. In the warp tool you can choose your grid type, and I use this 2x1 grid, and you'll see there's different ways you can manipulate it here. Because it's lower down, the top one you can just sort of pinch in. Oh, yep, I go back. So one thing I do before warping is I push that overlap back into the panel. So that grabs the footage from the next panel, so there is footage overlap, but it keeps it within the panel so the warping is even. So I'll go back and do my custom 1x2 grid. I'll grab the top 2 points and be on the wrong layer. Let's try that one more time. Grid, custom, 1x2, grab the top 2 points, and just feather those so they're in line with the background. I'll grab my bottom 2 points. These ones are going to be a little different because it's it's further down on the shape. So you'll see they won't line up if I just do that. And it has these extra little grabbers. So you'll want that line to follow the red shape, so you'll push them into the inside of the curve there, and then use the extra grabbers to make it line up with the shape. If you just click on the corner individually, it'll pull up those little grabber things. Alright, so first panel's done. I'll rename that to panel 1. Turn that off and go back to my original group, duplicate it, make that panel 2. Now turn off my first group and start working on panel 2. Again, I'll select plus a little overlap to the right. Actually, for this one, I'm not going to use the overlap because I want those to begin and end the picture. So I'm just going to grab up to the end of that picture. Then I'll invert and delete everything else. And then go back into the custom warp grid, select my top 2 points, get those lined up. Select my bottom 2 points, move those to in line with the curve, select one, that gives me the control. Select the other, that gives me the control. And there's panel 2. So all the ones that were the edges of pictures, I won't deal with the overlap, but the next one, panel 3 here, is in the middle of the picture, so I'll grab a bit of the overlap again. And then before I warp it, I'll move that overlap back in line with the panel. So I'm just going to up the speed here and skip through the rest of the panels, and then check back in at the end. Alright, everybody's warped, so I'm going to just group those together for ease. Let's try that again. Group those together. There's all my panels. Now the background on this is just going to be black. So I'll select that layer and just go through and fill all of these. Now I started with the correct circle template here, or sphere template, and then I resaved it as the new railroad sphere remap file here. So I have all my templates separate from this, and I just use those to rewarp everything. Alright, now everything's black, and I'll plop those back on top. And then usually at this point I'll go through and make a couple corrections here and there if there's anything that's not quite overlapping or slightly off.